Okay, let's unpack this. When you think of justice, you probably think of a place, right? A courtroom, a judge.
Yeah, a gavel, robes, all of it. It feels
Yeah.
very human, man-made.
Exactly. It's a legal thing written down on paper, but the stack of sources we're looking at today takes that whole idea and honestly just flips it on its head. We are not talking about traffic court today. We are doing a deep dive into the concept of al-Law.
Which is a term that carries so much weight. In Arabic, it means the just. And it's not just a concept, it's actually one of the names of God in Islamic theology.
Right. And if you think this is just going to be a sermon, well, think again. The materials we have are fascinating because they cover such a huge spectrum. We've got these heavy logic-based philosophical texts.
Hmm.
We've got detailed Quranic commentary. And then my favorite part, we have these incredibly blunt advice manuals written for medieval emperors and caliphs.
It's a huge range, but they all seem to circle back to the same core idea. They paint this picture of justice that isn't about laws. It's cosmic. It's like the operating system of the universe.
It really is. And to get there, the sources ask you to grapple with a definition of injustice that sounds, well, it sounds totally alien to a modern ear. It starts with this core question that really stops you in your tracks.
And a big one.
Is it even possible for the owner of everything to be unfair with their own property?
That's the whole question right there.
Yeah.
And the answer these sources give is, well, it's complicated, and it challenges a lot of our assumptions about fairness.
So here's our mission today. We're going to explore this concept of divine justice. We'll look at how it differs pretty radically from our human ideas of fairness. Then we're going to look at the terrifying burden this concept puts on leaders.
Using some very graphic metaphors from the texts.
Oh, yeah. And finally, we'll see how it all applies to the little kingdom inside our own heads.
So it's a journey from the entire universe down to our own psychology.
Exactly. So let's start at the foundation. The word itself, al-adl.
Al-adl. Right. At its root, it means straightness, balance, impartiality. But when we get into the theology, specifically with scholars like Imam as-Sanusi and the famous philosopher al-Ghazali, they drop this logic bomb that changes everything.
This was the part of the reading I had to go over twice. Because usually we define injustice as, doing something bad to someone or just being mean.
Right, but for these scholars, that's not rigorous enough.
Yeah.
They needed a more sort of philosophical definition.
Yeah.
So al-Ghazali and as-Sanusi define injustice, or zulm, very specifically, disposing of another person's property without right.
Okay, let's pause on that. Disposing of another person's property. So if I walk into your house and smash your lamp, that's injustice. Not just because a lamp is broken.
But because it was your lamp. You crossed a boundary into a domain that wasn't yours.
I had no right.
You had no right. Now, here's where the theology makes its checkmate move. Since God created everything, the stars, the planets, you, me, the very atoms we're made of, the entire universe is his mulk, his dominion.
Ah, I see where this is going. If he owns literally everything.
He can never commit injustice.
Right.
By definition.
Wow.
He's only ever disposing of his own property.
So it's like if I own a set of Legos and I built a castle and then I decide to smash it, I'm not being unjust. I might be erratic, sure, but I haven't wronged anyone. I'm just rearranging my own plastic.
That's the exact analogy. Al-Ghazali is very firm on this. He says there's no higher ruler above God to set rules for him. Injustice means breaking a rule or trespassing. Well, God is the rule. He owns the land.
But this is where the friction comes in for us, right? Because we look at the world and we see poverty, illness, tragedy, and our first instinct is to say, is this fair?
And al-Ghazali addresses that head on. He basically says, stop applying human standards to the architect. In this framework, things like pain and poverty aren't injustices. A builder isn't unjust to his bricks when he places them at the bottom of the wall instead of the top.
We're just guests in his property.
That's the idea. It's a humbling, almost frightening shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It takes our human standard of fairness, which is usually, I get what I want, and just throws it out. It says, you don't own the building, so you don't get to complain about the layout. But the sources don't just leave us there in this sort of abstract philosophical void. They get very specific about how this justice actually plays out for us.
They do. And this is where we move from philosophy to the Quranic perspective, specifically the weight of an atom.
Yes. Surah An-Nisa, verse 40. The text says, indeed, Allah does not do injustice even as much as an atom's weight.
Atom's weight. I love that. It implies this incredible precision. It's not just general fairness, it's atomic.
And the commentary here, especially from Ibn Kathir, breaks this down. He explains that God never diminishes the reward for a good deed. not even by an atom.
Hmm.
And he never increases the punishment for a bad deed beyond what is exactly mathematically deserved.
But there's a little twist here, isn't there? I noticed in the notes that it's not a perfectly symmetrical scale.
That's what's so fascinating. It's asymmetric, but it's rigged in our favor.
Hmm.
Ibn Kathir points out, for bad deeds, you get exactly what you earned, 1 for 1. That's justice with a capital J.
Okay.
But for good deeds, the verse says he multiplies it.
So punishment is just math, but reward is generosity.
Exactly. Punishment is the strict application of the law. You broke the lamp, you pay for the lamp, but reward is grace. You fixed the lamp, and I gave you a mansion.
I think I like those odds better.
It actually leads to this really crucial distinction in the theology about the afterlife. The sources say people enter paradise through God's mercy,
Okay.
but people enter hell through God's justice.
Ugh. That's a heavy distinction.
It is.
It implies that if you stand there on the day of judgment and demand pure, strict fairness, you might be in trouble.
You'd be in a lot of trouble.
Because fairness means strict accounting for every single slip-up, every mistake, every atom of error. You don't actually want strict justice. You want mercy.
You want the multiplied reward, not the perfectly balanced scale. And this idea of balance is in another key verse, Surah An-Nahl. The commentators call this the highest moral foundation of the Qur'an. It says God commands al-adl, justice, and ihsan.
Which is good conduct or excellence. The source mentions the scholar al-Qurtubi here. How does he separate those two? Because in English, justice and good conduct, they sound kind of similar.
Al-Qurtubi interprets adl, or justice, as the baseline. It's fair treatment. You pay what you owe, no more, no less. It's the minimum viable product for a moral society.
Okay, the bare minimum.
But ihsan goes beyond that baseline. It's giving more than is required. It's being better than you strictly have to be.
So the universe runs on justice physics, cause and effect, but human relationships are meant to be sweetened by ihsan.
That's it. If we only had strict justice between us, society would be very cold. You owe me $5, give me $5 right now. Ihsan is, you know what, keep the $5, buy yourself lunch. Justice keeps the building standing. Ihsan makes it a home.
So we have this cosmic definition, God can't be unjust because he owns everything. Then we have this moral instruction for us to be balanced, but also kind. But then the sources take this sharp turn into politics.
They do. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. Because while God owns everything, human rulers are just. Well, they're middle management. And the warnings for them are absolutely terrifying.
There's this one quote that just jumped out at me. A kingdom may stand in disbelief, but it will not stand in injustice.
That is such a profound statement on sociology. It suggests justice is a structural necessity. You can have a society that doesn't believe in God, an atheist state, and it might function economically, socially for a long time.
Sure.
But a society that is fundamentally unfair, where the laws apply to some people but not others, it will collapse. It's like trying to defy social gravity.
And to illustrate this, the sources bring up a letter from Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, ruling a massive empire. And he writes to his governor, Musa al-Ash'ari, with this incredibly vivid and kind of gross metaphor.
A metaphor of the fattened animal.
Yeah, let's unpack that. Because usually if you're a corrupt politician, you think you're winning. You're skimming off the top, getting rich, living the good life.
Right. So Umar compares an unjust ruler to cattle grazing in a lush green pasture. And this animal is just eating greedily, getting fatter and fatter. And it's thinking, this is the life, I've totally made it.
But the twist is,
Umar warns that its very fatness is the cause of its death. The fatter it gets, the more appetizing it looks to the butcher.
wow. So the success of his corruption is actually accelerating his own doom.
Exactly. Umar's telling his governor, if you oppress people to enrich yourself, you aren't winning. You are just fattening yourself up for the slaughter. Whether that slaughter is a revolution or divine punishment or whatever, the fat is a liability, not an asset.
And he adds a ripple effect, doesn't he? Something like, beware of oppression, for your subordinates mimic you.
That's a key leadership insight. It holds up in any modern business school. Corruption trickles down. If the CEO is grazing greedily, every manager and employee will start grazing too. And eventually the whole system just rots from the head down.
Speaking of rotting systems, there's another analogy that really struck me. It's from a conversation with Harun al-Rashid, the famous caliph from the Arabian Nights. A wise man comes to him and tells him he's been appointed the gatekeeper of hell.
Talk about a job title you do not want on your resume.
Seriously, congratulations on the promotion. You're now the doorman of eternal fire. I mean, why would you say that to a king? It sounds like a massive insult.
It does, but the logic is actually really sound. The wise man tells Harun al-Rashid that God gave him three tools: the treasury, the whip, and the sword.
Okay, so money, law enforcement, and capital punishment, the fundamental tools of the state.
That's it. The treasury is for the needy to prevent poverty so people don't have to steal. The whip is to punish lawbreakers to maintain order. The sword is to execute murderers to prevent chaos. And the wise man says, if you use these tools correctly, you stop people from committing sins that would lead them to hell. You're blocking the gate.
You're saving them from themselves.
Yes. But if he doesn't, if he hoards the money so people steal to survive, or punishes the innocent, or lets murderers go free,
Then the gatekeeper himself goes into hell first.
he failed his shift. He let the chaos in.
It's a complete inversion of how we see power. We see it as a privilege, VIP treatment. These sources see power as a terrifying liability, like you're holding a live grenade.
There's one more analogy given to him that fits perfectly: the spring and the streams. The king is the spring, the source of the water. His officials are the streams that flow out from it.
And the takeaway is, if the source is clear, muddy streams don't matter much. But if the source is muddy, the clarity of the streams won't help.
It's all about the leader's integrity. You can have good people working for you, clean streams, but if you, the leader, are corrupt, the muddy spring, their goodness can't wash away your pollution. Eventually, the mud overtakes everything.
So we've got the fattened animal, the gatekeeper, and the muddy spring. But what happens when a ruler is unjust? What can people do? The sources mention a specific weapon of the oppressed. And this part, for me, was the most poetic and, well, haunting part of the text.
It really is. It says, fear the prayer of the oppressed. And it specifies that this person has no weapon but bitter tears.
Bitter tears, that's so evocative.
It is. And the warning is that there's no barrier between that prayer and God. The text even mentions the timing prayers offered before dawn or in the silence of the night.
That image gives me chills. The king is sleeping in his palace with all his guards thinking he's untouchable, but somewhere in the city, in the dark, a person he wronged is just crying and asking God for justice. And the source says that prayer pierces right through the palace walls.
It connects to something that Caliph al-Mahdi said. He was asked, what should we give the subjects? And he just replied, justice. Why? So the ruler can sleep peacefully in his grave, just as subjects sleep without fear of him.
That's the ultimate trade-off. You give justice, you get peace. You deny it, and you have to fear the night prayers of your own people.
Which raises a good question for us, though. We've been talking about kings and caliphs. Most people listening, well, most of us aren't running empires. So do these sources have anything to say to a regular person?
They do. And this is where it gets really interesting I think, for everyone listening. The sources shift from macro politics to the microcosmos of the human mind.
Yes. The text says that justice must first rise like a sun in the heart before it can shine on a household or a kingdom. If you don't have the sun inside, you can't have light outside.
I love that. But how do you actually install the sun? The text describes this battlefield inside your brain. It felt very modern, almost like a cognitive behavioral therapy.
It really does. It describes the mind as having two opposing armies. On one side, you have reason. The source says reason comes from the essence of the angels. It's God's army. It's long-term thinking, morality, logic.
And the other side?
Anger and whim. The army of Satan.
Mm.
Impulse, rage, selfish desire.
So internal injustice is just letting the bad guys win the war in your head.
Exactly. The text defines internal injustice as letting the captives, your anger and desires, take charge of the general, which is your reason. If your anger is giving orders to your intellect, you're committing an injustice against your own self. You've flipped the whole hierarchy.
That's profound. So being a just person isn't only about how you treat others. It starts with not letting your emotions hijack your intellect. It's about self-governance.
And it gives practical advice. It says you have to train yourself in generosity and forgiveness until it becomes a habit.
Sort of fake it till you make it.
Essentially, it says constant anger makes you resemble a beast, but controlling it makes you resemble prophets. It's a muscle you have to build. You don't just magically become just. You practice it until it becomes who you are.
Now, before we wrap up, there was one little detail in the source material that I found so fascinating. It's less theological and more, I don't know, cultural, a bit mystical. It's about the name al itself.
Ah, yes. The zikr, the remembrance practice.
You have to tell us about the bread.
Chuckles. Yes, the bread. So the source mentions this tradition that if someone writes the name al on 20 pieces of bread on a Thursday night or Friday, and then eats it.
Wait, they actually have to eat the bread?
Yes, you eat the bread.
Yeah.
And the tradition says this grants the person the assistance of all creation.
That is wildly specific. 20 pieces.
And it adds that just reciting the name 20 times on Friday night increases sincerity and fidelity among your friends.
Now, to a modern ear, that might sound like magic, but I think there's something psychological happening there.
I completely agree. Whether you see it as mystical or symbolic, it shows how deeply people wanted to internalize this quality. They literally wanted to consume justice.
To make it part of their sustenance.
Right. You are what you eat. They wanted to be nourished by fairness.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Consuming justice so it becomes part of your cellular structure.
Indeed. It wasn't just a legal concept for them. It was a nutrient.
So let's recap where we've been. This was a wide-ranging dive from the entire cosmos down to a piece of bread.
We started with that huge cosmic definition. God can't be unjust because he owns the universe, he sets the rules, so he is the standard.
Then we moved to the political, the ruler as a gatekeeper, the danger of being the fattened animal who thinks corruption is success.
And we landed on the personal, that sun of justice rising in the heart by letting your reason rule over your anger.
It's a complete system. It connects the creator, society, and the self.
It really is. For me, the biggest takeaway is this idea of borrowed authority. Whether you're a parent or a manager at work or just managing your own life, any power you have is temporary. It's on loan.
And how you use that loan determines everything.
Exactly. The sources are so clear, you can't be a muddy spring and expect clear water in your life.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on, maybe while you're eating a piece of bread. The sources say the prayer of the oppressed is a weapon that pierces all barriers. If justice really is the foundation of the universe, where in your own life are you maybe acting like that muddy spring, assuming your authority is absolute, when it's actually just borrowed?
That's the question to sleep on.
Weigh your actions with the precision of an atom, everyone. Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.